Let's bring James Wild in here. James, Conservative MP for North West Norfolk. The obvious first question to you is your response to the fact that Labour are saying, well, this is the situation we've been left with. This is actually the previous Conservative government's fault.
Well, it's total nonsense. This is an extraordinary choice by Labour to take money from vulnerable pensioners, and it's completely unfair. The so-called black hole that Labour are talking about, half of that has been created by them giving inflation-busting pay rises to people like train drivers. So they didn't need to do this, they've chosen to do it. And it's going to hit 200,000 people across Norfolk.
What about the point, though, that the winter fuel payments, as it existed, was going to some people who actually openly admit they didn't really need it?
Well, this argument that somehow this is about stopping Mick Jagger from getting his winter fuel payment, the Age Concern have pointed out that there are 2.5 million people on low incomes who are going to be hit by this, particularly people who are around the poverty level. There are obviously people who are at the higher end who get this, who don't need it necessarily. But there could have been an intelligent way at looking at this rather than what Labour have done, which is rush through this change. As we're hearing, the weather's changing, we're moving into a colder spell. There's no time for anyone to make alternative arrangements. There's about 800,000 people who don't claim pension credit who are entitled to it, but even on the government's figures, they expect that to increase by 5%. In my constituency, that's 150 people with 1,500 people who still aren't claiming. So the idea that that's the solution to this is not true. All we know is that people are going to be losing payments. They need to heat their home. People who are looking after bedbound partners or parents who need the money because they have higher heating bills, people who are disabled or who have other needs that mean that they have to use more energy. This is going to hit them very hard, and there's no time for them to make alternative plans for this year. And also last year, they also got an extra £300 cost of living payment from the Conservative government, which Labour have decided not to put in place either. So it's a double whammy.
It's difficult, though, isn't it, as somebody who's been a Conservative MP for a long time, to sit here and protest against something that you could put down as being another example of austerity. It was the Conservatives that started this 14 years ago.
Well, I think 14 years ago, we inherited a budget deficit north of 10%, a massive financial crisis, and we had to put the books back in balance. And it was because we did that when COVID came along and when the energy price shock came along, we were able to put £400 billion of support in place. So this has nothing to do with the Conservatives. This is a Labour Party decision. It's their choice to do this, to go after pensioners. I think it's a really cruel and unfair policy that they've put forward. I find it extraordinary that only one Labour MP was prepared to stand up for their constituents and vote against this, and everyone else who's just been elected on a message of change went along with it. I don't think that's the change that people wanted. We've seen huge responses to petitions that have been running by Age UK and other organisations which show the impact that this is going to have. And it's about people at the end of the day. It's not about these numbers. And there's going to be more illnesses for people through this. The Chief Medical Officer and others have pointed out the impact that heating and not being able to turn on your heating and being worried about the bill will have. And that's Labour's choice. It's nothing to do with the Conservatives.
Stefan Akerone from the Lib